Hey Danielle, what's up? I'm glad you reached out and I am here for you. You're right, I'm not your therapist, but I definitely am here for you and I want you to reach out, when you're struggling through this course. So I'm going to try and touch on a few things here. Um, so, number one, say your emotions are all over the place. That's kind of just how things go at a certain point, especially, sorry. Especially when you are at this stage of the course, because kind of what we've been working on so far is cracking the shell. We've been trying to get into that inner core of who you are. We've built a bit of the emotional foundation and we started that. And then the exercises that we were doing in week 2 and 3 are meant to kind of crack the wall that we've built up around our hearts. So a lot of this stuff is starting to flood out. And that's okay. It might be uncomfortable for brief periods. One of the main reasons why it's uncomfortable is because what we're doing here is we're switching our programming. We're learning how to focus more inwards as opposed to on what's happening externally. And that's very uncomfortable for us because in order to do that, we need to let go of control over both the outside world and, at least for a brief period, our inside world as well. So we're kind of, we lose ourselves in all this where we used to protect ourselves by pushing the feelings aside and always focusing on what the external world was doing to us. That, it protected us from feeling our feelings, but it also created all of the problems and all of the cycles that we've been going through our whole lives. So cracking open your emotions again and no longer running from them is, in fact, what we've been doing. It's what we've been practicing. That is the point of all of this. Now you're right at that sort of, uncomfortable middle state where we've cracked the barriers a little bit and all of this stuff is starting to come out, but you haven't quite yet developed all the skills that you need to keep them at bay and or cleared away enough of the rust. It's, Pandora's box is open and the stuff is starting to flow out. So, number one is to know that this is completely normal. That the emotions are, coming out there. They're all over the place a little bit right now. And that's just kind of part of the awakening and the healing journey. Now, the second part of this is you say that your thoughts are racing, which is true when it's happening. And the way that we need to start kind of trying to deal with this, like the first thing that we do is basically recognize and remember what I just told you now and everything that I've been telling you through this course so far. Step number one to eliminating the overthinking is through the intellect and through that sort of recognition. We need to get ourselves calm and stable enough where you can be in this moment where your emotions are all over the place, your thoughts start racing, and what we want to do is remember as quickly as possible over and over and over and remind ourselves and train ourselves to recognize and understand and know that the thoughts that you're having now, they're illusions. They didn't necessarily exist 3 days ago or 4 days ago when you weren't feeling like your emotions were all over the place. They're not going to exist in another moment when you are feeling better. The thoughts aren't real. They are illusions. They are manifestations and reflections of the feelings that you're having right now. So, knowing that doesn't immediately take away all the pain and get your feelings in order. But what it does is it keeps us from spiraling even further down. Because usually what happens is this cycle of thoughts, emotions, sensations, thoughts, emotions, sensations. So usually what's going on is these emotions that you're having, which they're just happening on their own. They're not connected specifically or necessarily to anything that's actually happening in your life. The feelings that you're having right now, it's because we cracked the barrier between your head and your heart, or it's because of collective energies, or it's because there's old trauma moving through you, or it's because of hormones. It doesn't matter why. Like, there are multiple explanations all the time of why things happen. That's what it means to be multidimensional. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked here. Anyways, so I think I lost my point. Right, the thoughts are illusions. They're not real. What we know is real is the emotions themselves. That's it. So, step number one is to recognize this. Remind ourselves that the thoughts that you're having that are racing right now, they're not real. They're not attached to anything. You didn't have them a bit ago. You're not going to have them in a bit. And usually, what happens is that cycle where the emotions hit the thoughts, and because we don't realize that these thoughts are illusions, then these thoughts create more uncomfortable sensations, that turning feeling in the pit of your stomach, the tightness in your chest, the, acid in your stomach, whatever it is. The thoughts make you feel more physical discomfort, sensational discomfort. That discomfort makes you even more scared and even more worried and even more frustrated. Those emotions create more thoughts. This creates more that. That creates more that. And around and around and around we go. So the reason why you can't stop thinking, or you're like, or why you can't get a hold of this, is because we usually allow this cycle to keep going through all of those stages. So stage number one of fixing this is recognize that. Recognize that there's a cycle going on here, and recognize that what's going on up here is an illusion. That way, as this cycle keeps on going, like it'll come up from the heart and go over here, and where it used to go from here down to there, we're going to stop it here. So with our thought, we're going to remind ourselves, all right, these thoughts aren't real. So I don't need to feel any more about that and more about that and more about that. We're going to pause it here as much as we can. All right. So we don't need to actively stop the thought. We can't stop the freight train exactly, but we remind ourselves that that's not a problem. So we can at least pull back the cycle and stop going in circles. Once we can maintain some sense of stability around that belief, knowledge, wisdom, thought that these thoughts are illusions, then we can turn our attention to the only real problem. The only real problem is the emotions. That's it. So the only way to stop the thoughts is by actively focusing on the root problem. So actively allowing ourselves to feel our feelings without needing to paint any new picture around it. See, usually what happens is you're trying to understand these emotions that you're having, or you're trying to explain them away, or you're trying to logically solve them. And that's why we keep going in circles. But when you can just stop and go like, okay, I'm experiencing sadness now. I'm experiencing anger now. And focus in. This is what the week two find the feeling is all about. We want to learn how to the emotion hits the brain and your brain starts circling around. First thing we want to notice, oh, those thoughts are happening. That's an illusion though, so I don't need to think these thoughts anymore. What am I feeling right now? Okay, I'm feeling sadness. Let's find that feeling inside of me. Once you find that feeling, then the point is to actively practice feeling it. Like, where is it? Where does it present itself in your body? Is it that turning feeling in the pit of your stomach? Is it tightness in your chest? Is it just this ball of energy that's kind of moving through you? And it doesn't even need to be like, it's not a physical sensation. It's energetic sensation. It's just sort of like, where is your attention drawn to? Where is there some tightness of energy, let's say, inside of you? And if you can focus directly on that, then you can really stop the cycle because you're going to notice it as its own thing. Like, you don't need to worry about it or freak out about it anymore. It's just an uncomfortable sensation. That's all it is. So anxiety, for example, tends to present as that turning feeling in the pit of your stomach. And when you can, like, anxiety, it's three things. It's that turning feeling in the pit of your stomach, it's that intangible sense of fear or dread, and it's the cycling thoughts. So when you can stop the cycling thoughts for a second and remind yourself, okay, right, those are illusions. And then when you can take that sort of, you remind yourself that that emotion that you're having, this fear, this dread that you're having right now, isn't real either, because there's nothing in your life to be afraid of. This is all the stuff that we've been working on in weeks 1 and 2, reminding ourselves of all that intellectually, that this is all illusion and you are actually safe. So once you can put those aside, what's left? Well, you've got this turning feeling in the pit of your stomach that we call anxiety. Okay, so you've got that turning feeling in the pit of your stomach. It's not pleasant, it's not fun, but it's nothing to worry about. That's all it is. It's just an unpleasant feeling in the pit of your stomach, and just like a stomach ache or just like a headache, it's gonna go away. And that's all there is to it. So in the meantime, you don't need to fight it. You don't need to struggle with it. You don't need to worry about it. Just treat it like a headache, like a stomach ache. Like, it is gonna go away. And in the meantime, you don't need to specifically do anything more. So that's step number 2, is to find the feeling and actively focus on it. Then, once you're somewhat stable enough to do that, step number 3 is using any of the 4 exercises that we learned in weeks 2 and 3, which are Ho'oponopono, I love myself and I'm beautiful, the mirror exercise, or the inner child exercise. Whichever one feels right to you in that moment. Once you can stop and find the feeling, use any one of those. Because every moment that you are focused on the feeling inside of you and doing one of those exercises, you are releasing some of the past trauma and fear that is stuck inside of you. And you're doing what I like to call emotional phase reduction, where you're going to bring up the negative, you're focusing on that uncomfortable feeling inside of you, while at the same time bringing up the positive. So you're focusing on the pain while saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. Those two frequencies are completely the opposite. So when we bring them up together, they cancel each other out. And bit by bit by bit, you start clearing out all of the fear and dread and trauma and all that stuff inside of you. So, step number 1, notice that this is all fear and that it's all an illusion and that these thoughts are nonsense. These thoughts are a manifestation, a reflection of the emotions that you're feeling right now. Okay, step number 2, find the physical or energetic sensation of that feeling. Where is it inside of you? What does it feel like? Sit with it, feel it. Step number 3, focus on that feeling while applying any of those 4 exercises that we have been learning. And once you can do that, then, you recognize that, oh, right, there's nothing to run from here. There's nothing to worry about. There's nothing to fear. And you get to start turning every moment of emotional distress into a moment of healing. Because all of this stuff, all of these emotions that are showing themselves to you right now are representations of your past trauma. This is exactly what you signed up for, in a way. Not the pain, not the struggle, not the whatever, but to bring up all the shit from the past so that you can finally overcome it and heal it and deal with it. So now it's coming up to the surface and you're asking me, well, how do I avoid this? Well, avoiding it, you didn't actually ask that. I'm just, take this all with a grain of salt. But, trying to deal with the symptoms is the opposite. We want to actually use this as the opportunity to heal. Your body is showing you all of your past trauma right now. And that's awesome, because this is how we heal it. So we learn and we recognize and we practice remembering that there's nothing to worry about here. You're safe, the emotions can't hurt you, and nothing has changed in your life. If you were like, if you weren't having paranoid thoughts a week ago, nothing has changed. Like, you're fine. Everything is fine. So we recognize and remember that. We learn how to feel the sensation of the feeling without fear, to actually confront it and look at it head on and be like, oh, that's what that feels like. That's what anxiety feels like. That's what sadness feels like. That's what pain feels like. It's okay. It doesn't make it pleasant in the moment, but it's okay. We don't need to run. We don't need to add more fear around it. Now that we can look at this thing without fear, apply these exercises and let's start clearing out some of that trapped emotion. So that's it. It's just, this is the natural part of the process, and what your overall goal at this stage is to release fear around it. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with the fact that you're feeling emotions. It doesn't mean that something is going wrong. It doesn't mean that you're failing in this course. In fact, it means that you're exactly kind of where you need to be. So the main goal is about eliminating fear about whatever we're experiencing internally at any given time. To keep on trying to maintain some trust in the direction that you're moving in, and to know that everything's happening exactly as it should be. By knowing that, it doesn't immediately remove all of the unpleasantness and all of the discomfort, but it removes the suffering. It turns suffering into discomfort. Yeah, Like, you have a stomach ache right now. You have a headache right now. That's how you feel. It's nothing to freak out about. The stomach ache doesn't mean that you have cancer. The headache doesn't mean that you got a brain tumor. The over anxious emotions or the overzealous emotions right now doesn't mean anything. It means, in fact, that this stuff from the past is finally moving through you and coming to the surface, and you just need to learn how to feel it and handle it and confront it without fear. And to know that this is what healing feels like. Not always. Like, I'm not saying get ready for the worst 8 weeks of your life kind of thing. I'm just saying that you need to feel it to heal it. All of the stuff that's running through you now, it can't actually hurt you. And these are all of the feelings that you stuffed away the rest of your life. This is what you are trying to let go of. And what's happening now is this stuff that's been held down in a vault in the safe in the past is being released. So right now it's hitting your pores. It's hitting the surface of your consciousness, and that's why you're feeling all of this right now. And if you stuff it back down because you're still afraid to feel it, then you're going to keep going in circles. But if you allow yourself to feel it and allow this to move through you, then you finally get to heal, and you're going to start recognizing that there's nothing to worry about here. And there are going to be some days that you're going to spend a couple of days crying. You're going to spend some days, just completely exhausted emotionally and physically because the healing and releasing process drains us. It's very draining to let go of a lifetime's worth of trauma. So just remember that. Realize it. Know that this is a regular part of the journey. And then the only other thing is you don't need to be actively healing at any given moment. So some days, while you're having these emotional storms, you're just going to need to rest. You don't need to do the mirror exercise. You don't need to do the inner child exercise. I do recommend Ho'oponopono when I love myself and I'm beautiful all the time. The Ho'oponopono in particular. When you're like, it's weird. It's so hard. If you focus on the feeling and repeat these phrases, it's so hard to continue feeling shitty feelings in that moment. It really helps process these things. So stick to those as much as possible. But on a day that you don't feel like getting into deep meditation or doing a deep mirror exercise or doing the deep, inner child visualizations, don't. It's okay. What's going on is I liken this to learning to surf. It's so frustrating. This is all in my books. People just need to read my books. Okay. It's like before you went through an awakening of sorts, or before you started this course, or before you broke through that barrier of your heart, it was like you were underneath the surface of the ocean. You couldn't even recognize that all of this was happening, all these emotional waves. You were so blocked off from some of your emotions that they weren't registering as much. Now you broke through and you're at the surface of the ocean and you're starting to feel the waves. You're starting to recognize this. And you're sitting on your surfboard and it's like when the 1 and 2 foot waves hit, you're just strong enough to stay on your board right now and you can surf those waves. When the 5 foot waves come, you're barely strong enough to stay on your board for a few seconds right now. And when the 10 foot waves come, well, fuck, you can't surf those yet. So you just kind of need to, turn upside down on your board and wait for the giant waves to pass. That's where you're at in your journey right now. You're up at the surface of the ocean, and when you're dealing with the 1 and 2 and the 5 foot waves, you can handle yourself for now, and that's great. That's fine. And every time you do, with the 1 or the 5 foot waves, every time you allow yourself to focus on the feeling and do one of the exercises that we've been working on, that's you practicing surfing. You're getting better and better at riding those waves. And when the 10 foot waves come right now, it just sucks. But you remind yourself, okay, I'm safe. These 10 foot waves are going to pass and I'm going to feel good again soon. And then I'm going to get back to practicing my surfing. And once you get really good enough at this, then even the 10 foot waves aren't going to throw you off your board. And then the 20, and then the 30, and then the 40, and you eventually get to a point where not every moment of your life is emotionally pleasant, but no moment of your life can throw you off your board. You're not worried, you're not afraid anymore, nothing can fuck with you. So that's what we're working towards. So just recognize that you're in an emotional storm right now. There is a video in the course. I'm not sure which week it's in, but I do think it's in week 2, maybe 3. I don't know. Maybe I'll double check. I'll let you know. But it's called How to Stop Recycling Fear. It's actually on my YouTube page if you don't have it in the course yet. How to Stop Recycling Fear. Um, and I think that's basically where you're at right now. Is this stuff is coming up from the past, and you just need to make sure that you don't recycle it. Don't push it back down. It's coming up from the past to heal itself, to release itself through you by you allowing yourself to feel it. And if you can do that and apply the exercises and try and stay in this place of trust and faith and knowledge that this is just how it goes and everything's fine and perfect, and in fact, this is what you signed up for, and you're going to be every. Once you learn how to do everything I just spoke to you about in this video, then every moment of emotional distress becomes a moment of healing. And you get to recognize this more, which means eventually you get to a point where, and this is like I've been at this point for years now, where 99% of the time, even when I'm having an emotional struggle, an emotional storm, just a shitty moment, there's at least half of me that is actually pleased with that, because I know that in that moment, by allowing myself to feel it, I'm getting stronger, I'm getting healthier, I'm getting better. And by allowing myself to feel that in the moment, my life is about to get better. Now, you don't notice these things in specifically tangible ways. That like, ooh, every time I allow myself to go through an emotional storm, someone shows up at my door and gives me $10,000. It's not this one-to-one ratio kind of thing. You'll understand this later in the course when we talk a little bit more about energy and manifesting in week 7. But basically, every time that you release negative energy that's inside of you, it means that you're bringing in more positive energy inside of you. And as a result of that positive energy, your life is going to start a more and more upward spiral. So every time you allow yourself to clear some shit from the past, you become stronger. You become better. You get to that next stage. And it happens in little increments that you don't really notice. But when you can remember and remind yourself that every moment that you allow yourself to feel this stuff, your life is about to get better because you're releasing the negative and bringing in more positive, then you can even experience these emotional storms while reminding yourself that, like, ooh, this is a good thing. By not freaking out about this emotional storm, my life is about to get better. So I hope that helps. And yeah, just try and relax into it without fear. There's nothing wrong. There is discomfort. It might be unpleasant. But the only real suffering around it comes from the resistance. It comes from us trying to resist these feelings and push them away. We're so, like, we're flexing our muscles to make sure that nothing can hit us. But when we just relax and let this move through us, it's not like, when you can completely relax and completely let this move through you, then it's not even painful. Like, there's a beautiful bittersweetness to feeling our sadness, to feeling our anger. Like, once you let go of any resistance to it, it's a beautifully painful experience. Like, how can I put this? It's sort of like, just, I don't know, when you're so in love with someone that it hurts kind of thing. There are beautiful kinds of pain in this world. So resistance is the only real enemy. And yeah, all right. Hope that helps. And yeah, let me know. Take care for now. Bye bye.